Hey everyone, this is Kevin again. This is going to be my presentation on our competence to consent to a search and seizure. So let me go through and start with some definitions for y'all. Um, with the decision to consent to a search or seizure, it is definitely decisional competence. So the ability to be competent enough to make a particular decision, in this case, like yes or no. Um, Search and seizure, it is part of the Fourth Amendment. It's obtaining evidence based off of probable cause, searching people's houses, effects, papers, etc. The intersection of these two is when the Supreme Court must decide if a person is competent to consent to a reasonable search, which will get touched on later, or a seizure, which may make or break an entire case, depending on the legality of how all of the evidence was obtained. So, under our Fourth Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment prohibits unreasonable search and seizure, requires probable cause for a warrant, and our Supreme Court also held that under our Fourth Amendment, consent is still voluntary, even if the person does not know that they have the right to refuse. All right. So search and seizures with a warrant, you can pretty much get whatever you want. Your person you're serving the warrant to must allow the search compliant to the warrant. They do not need any particular consent from the individual, unless the search will go outside the scope of the warrant. So they have to give you exactly what they're looking for and exactly where it is. Anything else is no. Without warrant, that means they're coming in without a warrant, just asking. So the competency now comes into play to decide if you want to let them search or if you don't, and you have to know what that decision will mean. A consent for this, you just say yes or no. You can tell them where they can look and where they can't. And you can also retract consent at any time. So if you don't want them to search a specific room, like you can't do that. Or if you need to leave for any reason, you can tell them to get out. So the consent here is part of the yes or no, and it's only without a warrant. With a warrant, you don't really have any particular consent issues. The reliability of our search and seizure depends on the mental capacity, like we had talked about. Can they understand their rights in any regard to a search? Can they break through the lies and coercion of our legal system? Our law enforcement uses intimidation tactics, use of creative language and phrasing of different questions to get what they need. And the person who is saying yes or no to the search, um, doesn't matter if they have information on what they're doing or not. They, if they say yes, cops can come in, do what they need to do. If you say no, then just done. There are literally no rules governing the need for law enforcement to explain consent, especially telling them that they can refuse or um, take consent back throughout the entire process. So it's pretty much cops can say whatever they want to get to your house. They will either like make it sound more friendly, like, can I look through or whatever. It's very to the wording, I guess. Sorry if I didn't explain that correctly. That wording helps get what they want, and they're able to pretty much, yeah, lie to your face. Potential consequences. So any of our mis any misuse of power by our law enforcement to conduct a search or seizure, and they have no verified reasoning, no agreement or consent from the individual, or don't have a warrant, this can all be rendered evidence null and void, especially when people are not able to consent and law enforcement just takes advantage. Um, this pretty much gets rid of all evidence that they got at the scene or wherever they are um, entering. Um, so null and void, when you go to court, you can't use it. So it is highly possible for offenders to just get off because of one stupid mistake by a police officer. But all right, so I have a couple different outside sources. I wanted to post Arizona's statutes for search warrants just because that is the state that I'm in. Um, that's what I have to abide by, et cetera, et cetera. Goes to everything through search warrants. It's a really cool page to look at if you want to look at all of our statutes. I have another link here for our limits on search and seizure for different bodies of government or whatever, um, what they can and cannot do during a search and seizure. Um, I also found, and I really like this one, an MP3 file and also a transcript. So it's just the web page with those two things on it about who can consent to a search, and it's done by someone who actually works in the field and all that. Um, so it's definitely cool to listen to. My opinion on that link is if you listen between like um 40 seconds to like 2 minutes, 40 seconds, it gives like a straightforward who can consent, um, stated by the person doing the evaluation, pretty much. Um, and it's a really cool MP3. There's transcripts if you don't want to listen to it. It's not very long. It's like 6 minutes or so. I just didn't want to have to play all of that in here when you can also read it on their website. And I also came up with two kind of different discussion questions for y'all. First one, should law enforcement be free and able to coerce a voluntary search? So a search without a warrant, uh, without informing individuals of their right to refuse or their Fourth Amendment rights. Um, as of right this second, it is true. You don't have to. But if so, how can that evidence found be legally admissible in court since it was obtained without full understanding and regardless of mental state? Um, obviously, in my opinion, if you are not able to have an informed opinion about it, then I would say no. Um, and then I also found a second one just because I was thinking way too much. How can the current legal or court system implement a new system for a search and seizure with regards to informed consent? So should or can a warrant be a necessary first step in all instances? This would honestly just, in my opinion, get rid of any need for consent. Since you have a warrant, they have to let you. And that also negates any mental deficiencies or consent or ability to consent. Anyway, I would love to hear or read your responses to either of these questions. Um, my link's here. So my source is mainly the book, and then I had a little bit from the others. But name of our book, Arizona Legislator, Limits on Search and Seizures, and then that MP3 is who can consent to a search. And that would be that. This was a fun little project. Thanks for watching.